Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Rob Francis and this is my poetic exploration of the Black Country for a project called the Chain Coral Chorus. And this is a presentation for the University of Wolverhampton's annual research conference. As I say, my name's Rob Francis. I'm part of the lecturing team for the creative and professional writing in the School of Humanities. A couple of thank yous to introduce my ideas today and my poems. Let's say a big thanks to the Doctoral College and the Early Research Award Scheme, and to my mentor, Dr. Ben Colbert, and finally to the gang at the Black Country Geological Society. It's these people and institutes that have enabled my research over the last 12 months, both in funding and in time, and as well in expertise and conversation and friendship. So this time last year in June 2020, I was lucky enough to receive a fellowship on the Early Research Award Scheme for my project, the Chain Coral Chorus. And this allowed me to take up the position of poet in residence for the Black Country Geological Society, where I've been tasked with writing poems set in and inspired by the now UNESCO recognised Black Country Geopark. And the Geopark is a series of smaller geosites, 40 plus in number, that are scattered around Dudley, Sandwell, Wolverhampton and Walsall, that make up the wider global geopark. And these are sites of geological heritage, of rich flora and fauna and ecological concern, and of sustainable tourism, as well as sites of industrial heritage as well. One of the things that I'm really interested in as a creative and as a researcher, and something that formed the backbone of my PhD research here at the University of Wolverhampton, was environmental psychology, and in particular the term and ideas associated with place identity. And place identity was an idea that was coined by Harold Prashansky, who thought about place as this sort of morphing, evolving, building and breeding of different things, of stimuli, of signs and symbols that all interact in the same way that a spider's web interacts, and you can hear one thing connect and disperse and play right across it all of its different threads. And this works in the same way that local infrastructure, buildings, history, memory, smells, food, topography, geology, friendship groups, sites of cultural and historic significance all play together and weave together and start to kind of play each other's strings or threads and tie themselves together into what we might call the spirit of place, or the genius loci. And it's these things that we start to imbibe in ourselves as people within a landscape, or of communities within a locale, that Prashansky called place identity. It's how we see ourselves within our immediate locales, and how that locale imbibes its energies into us. And through this geological poetic research, I wanted to try and get to the bedrock of that genius loci, get to the bedrock of that place identity. And so what better way than into the earth itself, and into deep time and geological observations of the landscape and the culture. And this seemed particularly pertinent to our region because if it wasn't for the geological heritage, if it wasn't for the geological wonders underneath the soils, underneath our everydays, we wouldn't have the culture and community that we have today. Since most of our sense of spirit of self or spirit of place is tied up with our industrial past, the glass makers, the steel makers, the forges, the furnaces, nail makers and chain makers, none of that would have happened without the mineral rich and fossil rich grounds and the coal seam that underpinned all of that. And it's more than just work as well, because the forges and the steelworks and the factories were the epicenters of the place identity. They were the epicenters of purpose-built housing estates which homed the religious buildings where people prayed together, and the sporting facilities where people played together, and the working men's clubs and pubs, etc., where people entertained and joined together communally. So you can see just from that linchpin of a forge or a steelworks or a mine that this dance of place identity starts to spread out and entwine itself in sort of rhizomatic ways. And as I say, the bedrock, to use a geological term, of that spirit of place, of that dance of place, is the fossil rich and mineral rich grounds that the Black Country is so famous for. And these ideas have kind of led me down into a field of research called geopoetics, which is a philosophical, spiritual, creative inquiry into the way in which we connect with the earth in the Anthropocene. It's deeply concerned with grounding and reconfiguring our relationships with the earth, with deep time observation and geological ideas. One of its proponents, Don Mackay, the Canadian poet, called it a bridge between scientific innovation and factual-led discourse with the more ephemeral, mythological or agnostic approach to culture and ways of being. Another really big name in the field of geopoetics is Kenneth White. Kenneth White said that the greatest poetics come from contact with the earth, and that when we are outside, we gain what he called topographic or topological presence. And you might think about this in terms of the awe-stricken nature of the sublime in Romantic and Gothic traditions. And of course, in the word itself, geo meaning earth or world, or even ground, and poetics meaning to make. We are, in this project and in my research, we are earth making, we are land making, we are grounding the culture. So these are the ideas that I've been playing with over the last 12 months that form what will be a collection of poems. It's currently standing at about 40 pages worth of poems, and I'm going to share some of those with you now. The first poem that I want to share is a poem called Coalescence, and this is a term, a geological term that's based around the ideas of different minerals fusing, or different substances fusing to form a solution or conjugate. In the movement of the rocks and the pressure of the plates and bedrocks, or in the heat of different parts of the earth, coalescence takes place. And I like to think about this in terms of that place identity and the roots of culture and community as well. So this is coalescence. Just spring, the last leaves left from autumn's mulching leak into pig iron grounds, greywhack, fire clay, ironstone, sit turbid at Netherton Spa, where dog walkers and rambling clubs and pinfold teens and locked-in pensioners sense the spectral gravity beneath feet. It seems to whine at the fly-tipped waist. It takes it into itself. And the buds from bramble, damson, white room from eyes between quick flash of bluebell, snowdrop. Rheum drips in Dalton caverns as in weeping elms and human pores. This land leaves them colloidal. We suspend. The next poem I want to share with you is a poem called Stratigraphic Time, and it's become one of my favourite words over the last 12 months. Stratigraphic and stratigraphic layers and stratigraphic time. And when we think about things being stratigraphic, we think about the layers and lines and shifts of the earth. So, in the same way that you could chop a tree trunk across the middle and count its rings and figure out its age, but also the environment in which it's lived, we can do similar things with the layers of rock that are right beneath our feet all of the time, right beneath our mundane domestic lives, and indeed that are featured greatly in the Black Country Geopark sites. This measurement of time and this measurement of movement takes us into that deep time observation of millennia long stretches of earth shape, earth movement, earth upheaval, and the changes that connect us to our places in the ways that I've laid out, but also in the ways in which this might leave us in the deep and awe-stricken recollection of our own insignificance and toddlerdom as humanity. This is stratigraphic time. Ground frost sits shaded before May Day rays thaw, and we use its silver shimmer like fisherman trails through fence, follow hawthorn nook, cowslip cause, iced pebble mass to Great Bar Fault, where breccia forges god time in red rock displacements. At the stratofold, I'm taken between dimensions to steaming swamp forests, flittering with glitter bubbles of squirming chilopoda. Its curl speaks the same song as bracken, chain coral's infinite coda. Then home, now frosts are mellowed, and circuits and circles and stirrings clasp everything. It's not just our ancient rocks that are around us so often in the Black Country and in the sort of post-industrial UK more generally. It's also the industrial rocks and the industrial remains, and that's sort of addressed in this next poem, which is based in Sedgley Beacon, where you can find quite a lot of the rocks that you see on this slide here, which are bits of clinker, bits of spoil from the forges, the minerals that, the waste minerals that can't be used, that have been burnt out of use. And it's got a beautiful name called clinker. This is Thursday, Beacon Hill Quarry. Our Roy said, "It's scarred, beauty marked by beacon fires, Rottley's lunar scopings, his shepherd's limestone ways, lighting lens on knapweed, carline, ox tongue, heeding optic glares against hair streak flutterings." Roy said, "Them rare, our kid, rare buttes on Butte Mark Mount. That's why Sedgley Morris men come circling among wits and flames. You can't have a beacon without a watchman. He lays the lee's spine, supporting steep steps. Sun rays make glitter, make dirt glimmer, magnifies silty mudstone and brown lime. Lagoon shallowed in Gorstian days, if earth bones know what days mean. And further to skeletal stems of sea lily, bryophyte, velvet worm, contesters hand-holding, forward-facing, tracing and traced in Thunner's forge, like me and my shepherd. On Wolverhampton Road we stop for fags at the BP and sup a pint at the Mount Pleasant. He granddads me, reaches into pocket, hands me 3 black bubbled bibbles of clinker. "Try her a bit," he says. The next 2 poems I'm going to do are related to some of the most cutting-edge research in geology. We know in the humanities that it's vital that we pay attention to history in order to have that sort of cultural memory of things to avoid and things to be aware of and things to protect in our presents and our futures. And very similar work is happening in terms of the attention to the earth and geology in light and context with the current climate debates and ecological concerns. Geologists are going back to the rocks that show the significant climate changes of the Earth's history. Ice ages, droughts and things like that. The moments in our Earth's history where huge change and upheaval has happened. And it's by studying the remains of the creatures that are found there that we can get a better picture of what sorts of creatures survive in those sorts of habitats, what sorts of creatures don't do well, and what we need to be alert to in terms of the flora and fauna of our seas and the flora and fauna of our lands and air. And one of the things that they use to do this is to look at the levels of fish bone remains in rock. And that's what this poem is sort of based on. It's called Ichthyolith, which is an old type of fossilised fish bone. Bleached lichen webs the blushed sandstone, and mosses crawl and rasp roots roam, and silver birch mudlarks its leaves where umber tan stour waters weave. And Matt skulks down the cut's towpath, somnambulist arm becomes a snath, and scratches nails against the grains, passing daily, left arm cranes the Triassic interglacial loads, and watch the players dominoed and sup in the Royal Exchange, talons gritted in glassmaker range of sediments, dark amber like his ale. Matt sits and marks his nails, unaware of dead etiolated teeth of time clammed Ichthyolith, fish rock gemmed in keratin. He touches it, it touches him. And in a very similar mode, this next poem is called Coccolithophore. The image here is a Coccolithophore, or a foram, which are types of ancient sort of minuscule creatures like plankton. And again, these are used by looking at the remains of seabeds from eras past. We're able to figure out what the food chain looked like in the ocean during particular periods of ecological struggle, or climate struggle, or landscape struggle. And those are then used to kind of predict what we need to put in place for future generations. So this is Coccolithophore. In chain coral coders, she crystallized convex plates with polysaccharides. Her fearless radial symmetries burn bright in sheer geometries, raise white cliffs in pelagite spew, colours the reef and mesh of foods, clean solutes with light, gases the wreck in choral ashe arabesques. Father, daughter, bring tip to tongue from another humanless and long fieldwork drift to Shire Oak Bar, tasting salt-driven wyvern's scar. Call her Emeliani, Huxley, Coccolithophore. Nothing so huge has ever been so small. And the final poem I want to share with you today is a bit more of an experimental one. Those last two were very formal, Coccolithophore being a sonnet and the previous one being in heroic couplets. This is much more E. Cummings. One of the things that you'll find if you go about fossil hunting in the Black Country Geopark is the image that you see here. And this is one of my own collection from the wren's nest. And it's effectively a chunk of Silurian seabed, 428 million years old. And you can see just from that image that it's full of crustaceans and odd little sea creatures from that period of time, from that tropical swamp that used to be Dudley, that became Dudley, should I say. And these in the trade are called fossil pizza because they're sort of big chunks of rock that contain lots of different toppings. And I liked the idea of a fossil pizza, and so I played around with that in this verse. Fossil pizza. Down Dawn End, and the damp dank of moss-licked blue bricks arched above the thunderclap currents of daily commuters, we circle into reef patches of first life. Shell, brittle star sponge, bivalve, cephalopod, algae, eurypterid, rugose, horn, cooksonia, cartilage, vascular tissue and movement held in white world of stilly soils. I'd like to thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry I couldn't have done this live with technical issues that I had. I hope this gets used, and thanks very much for listening to me. You can contact me on the links there on Twitter @RMFrancis, and please visit my blog. If you put Chain Coral Chorus into a web search, I'll come up. Thank you once again. Ta-ra a bit, and in the rocks we trust.